David looked at that young woman with her swollen belly and her eyes full of tears, and he immediately understood that this would not be a day like any other. Before finding out what happens, I invite you to subscribe to the channel so as not to miss our future stories. Enjoy. David had always lived a respectable life, at least to others. He was a renowned surgeon, beloved by his patients and respected by his colleagues. Every day was a succession of delicate interventions, lives saved, and emotional thanks. But there was a part of his existence that remained empty, a void that no professional success could fill. 50 years old, a painful divorce behind him, and only one faithful companion, his dog, Teddy. When his ex-wife Samantha left, David felt a relief that had frightened him. Samantha was always distant, more attentive to her needs than those around her. Their marriage had collapsed under the weight of betrayals and misunderstandings, leaving David alone with his regrets. One, more than all, tore his heart. Emma. Emma had been his great love, the woman he wanted by his side for the rest of his life. But external pressures, especially those of his family, had put an end to their relationship. Emma came from a humble family, and David's parents had never accepted her. Unfortunately, he had given in to those influences, letting her go, and then she had simply disappeared. Not a day went by that David didn't think about her. In the last few months, his obsession with the past had become so strong that he had hired a private investigator, John, to look for her. But every phone call from John brought only frustration and pain. Emma seemed to have vanished into thin air until that day. David had gone out for a walk with Teddy, trying to enjoy his day off. The sun was shining brightly over Perugia, and the clear sky seemed to promise a sunny day. But everything changed when he saw that scene in the store parking lot, a young pregnant woman, desperate, arguing heatedly with a taxi driver. David's heart skipped a beat. "Please, I only have 10 euros, the girl begged with a trembling voice, while she touched her swollen belly. The taxi driver shook his head, adamant, determined not to give in. David couldn't stand by and watch. He couldn't bear the thought of leaving this young woman in distress. "Is everything okay?" he asked, approaching calmly. The taxi driver, without even looking at him, replied brusquely, "It's none of your business." But David was not the type to be intimidated. A glance and a short speech were enough, and the taxi driver immediately changed his attitude and drove away, leaving David and the young woman alone. The girl, relieved but embarrassed, looked down. "Thank you," she said in a small voice. "I didn't mean to bother anyone, but I have no money. My boyfriend left me. I don't have a house. And my job, well, I can't work anymore since I got pregnant." David felt a knot in his stomach. There was something about this young woman that seemed incredibly familiar to him, but he couldn't put his finger on what it was. Maybe it was just the pity he felt for her, or maybe there was something deeper. Without thinking too much, he took out 3 bills and handed them to her. "Here, take this. It's not much, but it should help." The girl's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know how to thank you," she said. "I'll never forget your generosity." David watched her go, his heart heavy. He had done all he could, yet he felt it wasn't enough. When he returned home, he found Teddy waiting for him with his usual wagging tail. but the thought of that girl and the mystery that seemed to surround her did not leave him in peace. Later that evening, the phone rang. It was John, the detective. "David, I found Emma," he said in a serious voice. David held his breath. Finally, after so many months of waiting, he could hug the woman he had loved all his life. But the joy lasted only an instant. "I'm sorry, David. Emma died 20 years ago. I found her grave." David felt his world collapse. All those years of wondering where she was, imagining a happy life for her, and now he found out she had been just a few miles away from him, buried in a cemetery. He didn't know how to deal with this news. He decided to visit the grave the next day, looking for some kind of closure. The next morning, with a heavy heart, David headed to the cemetery. His legs felt like lead as he walked among the graves. When he finally found Emma's headstone, his heart stopped. There was a young woman standing in front of the grave, a bouquet of white lilies in her hands. He stood there watching her for a moment. Then the girl turned around, and David recognized her immediately. It was the same girl he had helped the day before. If you like the story, leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Thanks for the support. David approached slowly. "What are you doing here?" he asked in a trembling voice. The girl looked at him with wide, astonished eyes. "My name's Sophia," he said softly. "Emma. She was my mother." David felt his blood run cold. Sophia continued, explaining that her mother had died of leukemia 20 years earlier, but not before she had her. Emma had never told anyone about Sophia's father, not even Sophia herself. But now, with this chance meeting, everything was clear. David looked at Sophia, then at Emma's grave. Tears blurred his vision. The woman he had loved all his life had hidden something so important from him, thinking she was protecting him. And now, in front of him, was the daughter he never knew he had, pregnant and alone, just as her mother had been. They hugged each other, finally feeling a sense of peace. They were no longer alone. They would face everything together as a family. And you, what would you do if you discovered such a shocking truth about your past? Write it in the comments. See you soon.